Well, good morning to everyone here, and thanks for being all here. So the topic I was attributed to was efficient distribution, expanding the network, which Florian obviously took already a bit a touch on, but I'll try to give it some more views on that and what does it mean in order to do it in Germany. So maybe first, quick overview, where do we come from? And you know that we are kind of a bit different company to say so, because we are one of the only 3 cultivators in Germany who does actually cultivation. But it's important to us to say it's not only limited to cultivation. So the company started in 2017 when we applied for the licenses. You know, there were more than 113 applications applying for a license. We are the only German company which was awarded with a license. Got the tender, then bought the facility close to Dresden and fitted it out in order to be able to cultivate cannabis, because it was previously a slaughterhouse. And then we already started with R&D, and I think this is a very important part which we'll touch during my talk again and again when it comes to providing new innovative medicines as well to patients, because we know that cannabis is a plant which every person perceives differently. So I think that is something we need to take into account, which is reflected somehow as well in the variety of different strains which are available today. But then we did all this R&D process already during the build out of the facility, and we started to build out the facility in March 2021, which was basically a year delayed due to COVID, as you know, and we finished construction in October. So from March to October, we did the construction, which shows that you can build up a high-tech and well-established cannabis facility in a very short time frame. And then got our GMP audit in November and had our GMP license in hand in January, which means start of construction until the license is 10 months. This is something doable. We did it. So just to reflect on that, when we hear politicians who say it takes such a long time to set up a new cannabis facility to get GMP, well, we have shown that it's not the case. And then we obviously launched the first own extracts as well. We started to import product in parallel, because obviously as a small German startup, we needed to make revenues as well. We started with DEMECAN and then had our first delivery on 4/20 of 2022. So I think a good day to start with the first delivery of the German cannabis. And right now, just to give you that figure as well, the cannabis we produce, we only have 3 of the 13 lots. We make more than 60% of the market share of the cannabis which is produced in Germany. So I think that reflects that we are able to produce high quality cannabis at our facility. And a very important part is something which we achieved just mid of last year, I got to say. We have our own EU GMP laboratory, so we do all the release testing now at our own lab. That is very good, because you can do lots of in-process controls, obviously, but now also the release controls, to be sure that you have good quality, which goes in the line with what we need all in the market. So if you look at the full value chain, that is actually what we also cover. We start really with the genetics, with the TC lab, tissue culture lab, and I will come to that in a minute, and the R&D area where we really develop new strains. We do obviously the propagation and cultivation part at our facility, but as I said, that's just one part. Then do the manufacturing on the GMP, obviously at the facility, the lab, and do obviously also have a wholesale business, because we are limited to what we can produce in Germany. We could already produce more, but we are limited to 1 ton. The government does not allow us to produce more. I could, as of today, just produce 1 ton more in that facility, but we are not allowed currently to do so. So we see this as a huge disadvantage to the German place to be, and it's just does not make any sense to import cannabis from wherever in the world in the end. If we could do it already in Germany, we can do it also business-wise positively, because that's already something we are doing right now. And obviously, we have own brands then developed and have that wholesale business set up. Coming to the supply part, because it's again about the network again, we see that safekeeping the strains and developing obviously new genetics is crucial in order to be able to grow the company and to be able to serve the market. So we early on already established our TC lab, where we are obviously having, so that is basically taking the cells in vitro, and by that assuring that you don't have any viruses or anything like that within the plants, which ensures that you really have a good product quality in the end. And that is something where we invested early on in. So we have a team there which is working at our site, getting the strains which we are developing into TC as well, in order to be able to also ensure that these plants will be available to the market over a long time horizon, because no one wants that a strain just runs out because well, the mother plants may be infected and you won't be able to supply the patients anymore. I think we all know that a steady supply, especially for chronic patients, is important. That's why we invested into that and say this is a crucial part as well. And not only for us here in Germany, but obviously also when we look at our supplier network, where we can jointly work then together and use the developments we do at our site, because that's what we obviously also can do and do already right now in Germany, which is R&D development. Under R&D license, we can develop many new strains. We just can't sell them yet, which are just touched. And I think in the end then, as we are quite limited right now, the very important point is to have a reliable and scalable supplier network. Because in the end, it's always about ensuring that you have also continuous product supply. The challenge is, and you can just depicted a couple of the countries here, is obviously to get the product to Germany, because you see sometimes very long distances. We know that you have microbiological burdens which need to be, or limits which need to be accounted for. So you don't want to have any mold, for example, in your product. So there are many challenges, obviously, which go along with such huge distances sometimes the product travels from. But we established a very good network at DEMECAN to say, okay, we know the suppliers, we ordered them as well ourselves, obviously, just as Florian mentioned, they do, because we need to ensure that in the end the product we serve to the market adheres to the quality standards we want to have. Obviously, to get a new supplier onboarded and to do all this stuff, there are a couple of, I call them regulatory challenges in the end in the German market. The first one is the narcotics handling license, and everyone of our who works in the business knows what that means. So at least usually a 3 months time frame to get the update before you are able to handle a product. And that does not obviously only apply to our facility, but for example, if you lose a logistics service provider, he needs to do it. If you irradiate the product, that facility needs to have that license. So it takes sometimes more time than one would estimate. I mean, the pharmacies have a good advantage. They don't need that license for a particular product. We as a company need it for every single product we even only pass through our books, or even if we don't touch it. The second part obviously is the import and export license. In Germany, at least, this is fairly easy. It takes roughly 1 to 2 weeks to get the import license. Export license depends really on the country in the end. It may range from 4 weeks to 3 months, we have seen. So that is again a time-consuming factor which you need to take care of. And then in the end, the MRID-V, which I learned yesterday was just established in 2019. So very interesting what the government thought about that. But it's a process where I would say, which is a nightmare for everyone. It takes at least 3 months, and that's like the best case I've seen. And it goes up to 9-10 months until you get that license, because they require so many documents. You need so many studies, validation, and so on and so forth, that it is really a nightmare. And obviously this is also a hindering point, I would say, why there are not more products which are irradiated, which from a patient perspective, you talked about that yesterday, if you have immune suppressive patient, it totally makes sense to have a product which is irradiated. Obviously is a challenge. So if we then take all these points together, what does it mean in the end to extend and expand your supplier network? It takes really a long time. And I just depicted here a timeline which shows basically how long that process is. So from the first contact with a new supplier, where we say, okay, that sounds an interesting supplier to be, we always take the approach to do a site visit first. Because we want to be sure of how the production circumstances are. We want to see the flowers, we want to be there, because there are factors you will never be able to see over a video call. For example, the temperature. I have been in a greenhouse where you had temperature differences between 55 and 25 degrees between the different areas in the greenhouse. I think it's a no-brainer that this isn't a site where you would ever source cannabis from. well, now that greenhouse has been closed down. So just a remark on that. And then obviously, as soon as you know, okay, this is a facility we may work with, we start obviously with the application process for the narcotic handling license, because just from a regulatory perspective, as I explained, this takes most time. And in parallel, we negotiate the purchase agreement. So we do some little upfront investments in terms of the application process, obviously. And once we finish the purchase agreement, we then do obviously the audit, which is required in order to be sure that everything goes along as it should be. And as soon as that is done, then you can start with the import license and the export license, as I just explained. Until you have the first shipments, usually then you have already 6 months time, which has gone along. You may be able to shorten a couple of these times, doing them more in parallel, but just from a regulatory perspective, we got to acknowledge that certain stuff takes certain time. And then obviously we do the release testing, and we see that obviously products which are shipped, especially if they're non-irradiated, you may have issues with quality in terms of mold and yeast especially. So that is something where obviously you can ensure that the product should meet the quality standards, and until it is ready then for sale, it's roughly like a 2 to 3 time week frame to do the analysis. Yeah, you have in the end 6 to 8 months until you can really release a new product, which shows that expanding your supplier network is not something which you do from today to tomorrow. But in the end, I think the most important point is always obviously the product quality. So that is where we really focus on what we do already at our German facility, where we have a fully controlled system from irrigation, where we mix the fertilizers ourselves in order to put or to customize them to the specific plant and the stage of the plant, to the drying processes. All these different process steps from our point of view are very important. Obviously the GCP compliance for the cultivation, so that you have SOPs and processes established, that you have virus-free plants. I just talked about the tissue culture, but also do, as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of in-process controls in order to be sure that the plants grow as required and do not have any issues. And integrated pest management is also crucial. So to be sure that you don't have any external bacteria viruses which come into the facility. So anyone who has been at our facility knows that he needs to change various times clothes, because we just want to ensure that nothing gets into the facility. And then, well, obviously the personnel in the end who treats the plants is the most important, because other than that, if they were not there, the plants would not grow accordingly. So that's a quick overview of what DEMECAN does, how we see the supplier network, and I hope to have provided some insights on what it means to extend and expand your supplier base. Thank you.